All right, here we go again. Here, not ear, as my mum would probably listen to this and get very annoyed. I'm back for another one. I feel like I'm sitting at an angle like this. I'm filming this on a PC. I set this up. If you watched the last one, it's all a bit different in here. I've had to rearrange, and I've set up this PC because that's better for recording to a computer, and I hate it because it's PC and I'm small-minded like that. So hopefully the sync is alright, hopefully the audio is alright. I'm still getting it all sorted and stuff like that, but I quite like the kind of the slightly more depth behind me. You can see Darwin down there sleeping. It'll probably be about 30 seconds before he starts moaning at me. Yeah, and I guess I've got a load more notes and a load more talking to do to the camera, which a lot of you seem to sort of really like. So thank you very much, because I really didn't expect the response I got. Before I go any further, if you want to listen to this rather than watch it, so you're like a sane person who doesn't sit and watch 45-minute long YouTube videos, link in the description. There's a link to the podcast version. Apologies for the delay. The issue that was last week, there was like an RSS feed thing that all bullshit, complicated stuff, but it was linking to the Motus podcast for some reason, but now it should all be sorted. So hit that, download, subscribe, all that, yeah. But yeah, thank you so much. Like, the positives definitely outweighed the negatives of kind of going transparent and public and sort of owning up to some mistakes and stuff like that. It felt very good to like say that stuff and be like, cool, like other people know about some shit now. And I had some really good chats. Like, it's only been a week, and some really good talks with a lot of people, a lot of positive responses to the idea of the London stuff, which I'm going to go on to. Lots of questions, lots of people joining the Discord. If you haven't yet, hit that, because we're starting to have some really good, like, progressive talks in there with regards to all those ideas. And yeah, lots of positivity. Obviously, the Queen tried to steal my kind of, tried to steal my what's the word? My thunder by dying, which wasn't great, because I uploaded this and then it was like, oh, I'm gonna watch Charles's video, and then instead it was just Queen stuff. But rip. I guess I'll go through some questions, and then I'm gonna have a drink first. Sorry, this is how these are going to be. Very, very loose. I'll go through some questions, and then I'll jump into the London stuff and kind of go through each of those projects, which, if anyone has joined the Discord, they'll see there's like 4 kind of channels, I think they're called, where we're discussing individual things and building out ideas there, which is really fun. A big one is like, oh, it seems like he's biting off a bit more than he can chew here, kind of thing. Definitely, 100%, 1 billion%, which is exactly why I want to do this in public and also build this with people and get other people involved. And as I said, I've already had people reaching out and being like, I'm down, I want to get involved in whatever fashion, which is really cool, and I'm very, very grateful for. And yeah, like, I am prepared that some of these things may not come to light in the way that I want them to, in the kind of vision in my head. You always have to kind of accept that sometimes you can't get everything to that grand vision, but right now I'm very, very, very determined to like get it there. And another thing was like, why do I think this is going to make me happy if I'm not already, was a kind of response I got from a few people. I guess maybe I came across a little bit unhappy in the last video, the first one, or I guess people, because obviously I've talked about being in dark places and things. Like, yes, Motus struggling makes me unhappy because it's what I've poured everything into, but I'm not looking at this as like, oh, that destination, finishing those things is suddenly going to give me this sense of happiness. It's more that I think what I've slowly realized is that I really like to have goals and then work towards them and enjoy that, like, that process and that journey. And so there's that aspect where it's like, I know that, and I was saying to Keelan the other day, just by starting this, my mind is now so much, because I've said, okay, this is happening, I've put it out there, I have that accountability. My mind is now just like fully fucking focused, and I'm really engaged, and like, it's given me this new lease of life almost with the brand and this project and everything, and I'm really hoping that by keeping up these public videos and keeping this kind of accountability, that will continue. And obviously there'll be troughs and what is it? I always say dips and troughs, but it's like hills and dips, good and bad. But yeah, I'm not expecting it to make me happy. And like I said, if the whole thing falls apart after that, so be it. But it's more that I stubbornly have sort of said to myself, like, I have to do this. I have to, like, 20 years, it just feels like the right time. It feels kind of apt to do it. So I'm going to give it my best shot. So that's like, you know, some people say I'm going to buy that car, I'm going to do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is my thing that I'm now determined to do. Do I think this would save the company? No, it's not like I'm saying, oh, if we release this project, if all this stuff happens, everything will be fine. Hopefully things will improve prior to that point. I personally don't want to spend the next year. I mean, it's going to be like, right now it's fucking really, really tough. It's just constantly juggling money, like cash flow issue after cash flow issue. And it's like, when it's really fucking draining. You're just kind of scrambling to do what you can to keep things moving and to keep things paid, etc., etc. It's so far from ideal. Obviously, if this project in a year's time is a huge success, then that could really, really help. But it's, you know, you can't sort of assume that one thing is going to fix everything. It's much better to fix things through like building better habits and creating better systems and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not doing this as like, oh, this is gonna fix everything. It's not gonna fix everything. If anything, it's gonna bring more problems because of time commitments and also like cash commitments and stuff like that. But it's, like I said, there's a drive there to get it done. Apologies if I'm not staring at the camera enough. I don't know where to look, but I've got all my notes here, so that's what I'm looking at. Why London and not the UK or the rest of the world? I think because obviously jump London, but one, it's attainable. It's easier to sort of, you've got to put a bracket around something. I think there will be a time and a place to do that, like global parkour history film, you know, the one that looks back at the impact of parkour around the world. But personally, I think 20 years is not enough time. I think that's like a 50-year thing, or maybe not 50, but it's too soon in my opinion. I really hope this audio isn't peaking. I keep seeing red, but hopefully it's not too crunchy. I'm very sorry if it is. But London is, I'm going to turn this down ever so slightly. Does that do it? La 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 la. Hopefully that has done a bit. London has, for me, been like, I mean, it's where I first got into it. It's obviously Jump London. I've spent 20 years journeying up there, being involved in the community, seeing it kind of do that up and downs, seeing the progression there. It's obviously one of those number like one tourist parkour places. It's steeped in history and culture, and because it's 20 years since Jump London, it just seems like it's the right thing to do and keep it kind of London based. And obviously, like, Jump London affected the entire UK scene, but London kind of is the representation of the UK scene. Obviously now Brighton and Bristol, and there's all these other cities that are huge contenders, and I think they will have their place in terms of being mentioned in things like the documentary and stuff like this. But it's easier to put a bracket around it in my head and make it more kind of focused predominantly on that, especially from like the video perspective. I had a load of other like questions and talks from people with regards to Motus and how it could potentially increase its revenue streams and make money other ways and stuff like this, but I will probably run through them and discuss that stuff in another video. I want to keep this one a bit more of an update because it's now 51 weeks. Last week it was 52, now it's 51 until the anniversary. So I just wanted to go through the progress. I mean, this week basically I haven't really done any like massive progress on this other than a lot of writing stuff down and talks with people and just a lot of like progressive thinking in my head with regards to fleshing out these ideas. Already just by putting it out there, I've started to now be like, okay, well, how do we do this? What does this look like if this was simple? Like, how would I want to see this thing come to light now that I've said it's happening, which has been really cool. There's been a lot to do like in-house, and Keelan and Bloggy have only been around for a couple of days. They're now down in Brighton for a few days. Keelan thankfully is back. I can't remember if I said in the last one, but he got super ill and was out for like a week or so after coming back from America, so we barely seen him, but he's now very much going to be focused on like the regular content with regards to Motus, parkour videos and things, which is cool. He's got a load of footage that's already backlogged from stuff we've been filming and going to America and things. They're shooting in Brighton right now, so he knows what he's doing there. Bloggy knows what he's doing, but it's been a lot of me just sort of doing stuff in-house, and we're releasing a collection tomorrow that typically just, I mean, the week before a collection, there's a lot of just admin. It's all uploading the products, sorting things out, marketing, etc. I've got to finish doing a stock count in a bit, and yeah, it's the kind of the boring stuff. And unfortunately, you also see, once you announce you're releasing a collection, you then typically see a bit of a dip in sales because people seem to just hold off to see what things are going to be on that day, which is never fun when you see the sales sort of dip a bit, because you're just like, oh fuck, like that makes everything a little bit trickier for the next few days. But that's fine, like it is what it is. But yeah, so before I make this video far too long, I found this bottle, by the way, at a festival, and then I washed it, and I now drink from it every day, and hopefully it's not disgusting. So the biggest one, the one that's really been in my head, is the video, the action piece, and my brain has gone many different directions over sort of since wanting to do this. From, oh, you do a Soul Destroyer type thing where it's like 40 minutes or an hour and a half, and it's a huge action piece and blah 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 blah. Definitely attainable, but a lot of work, requires a lot of consistency from which other athletes you get involved. It's a massive undertaking, and it can eat up a huge amount of time. And given that there's that to think about, the documentary and the photo book, clothing, just running the brand in general, etc., it's one that actually my head has started to almost go in the other direction and think maybe it would be better and more impactful to do a sort of, an 8 to 10 minute long resurgence style video, hard hitting shit. I mean, or Capstone's a good example. Like the 2 videos they've put out, and they're filming another one at the moment, they've all been sort of moderately short in length but incredibly hard hitting, and because they're public and free and available, they get a massive amount of exposure. And given that what I want this video to be, because some people were asking like, oh, are you going to be interviewing some of the old people in this video, or getting older athletes involved to do bits and things? I think the video, not the documentary, is more of like a marker in time of the progression of movement, and it's filmed in London is the way to do it. Not all the athletes have to be from London. It's not specifically about the London community, but I want to film it in London because it's attainable and because that's like the link. But it's a snapshot of where parkour movement is at this current time, 20 years from this first stone being thrown in the pond. Obviously, parkour wasn't started in London, and nor did it start in 2003, but it's just, we have that anniversary, so that's my kind of like my marker. But yeah, I'm starting to think maybe we do a shorter thing, but like an absolutely blow your socks off hard hitting thing, which is my personal favorite style of thing. I like it. I still remember Tom and Renee from Origins like reviewing Resurgence, and they were like, it was too much, like it was just back to back like hard hitting stuff that you couldn't actually appreciate it. You just immediately had to watch it again. And I'm like, good. Like, I want people to immediately finish something and be like, I have to fucking watch that again. Like, I have to go back and process all that stuff, because I think there are so many talented athletes out there that we have the capacity to like put those videos out, and it's so sick. And I'm starting to think that maybe this is the one that I could let go of and potentially get someone else involved in to shoot and even edit, because I think the documentary, I have slightly more of a vision of like what I want that to be, and I have a vision for the video side of things as well, but I don't think I'm as good at that style of video anymore. I haven't done videos like that in a while, obviously Soul Destroyer and things, but I'm I'm going to have to be delegating, and I'm going to have to be like asking for help and getting other people involved. And I think I would prefer more help on the video side of things than the documentary side of things, at least like at this stage in my head. I mean, the dream team essentially in my head is like where you get like the obvious thing is, I mean, Toby and Sasha, the fact that they're doing stuff for Capstone makes me think that they're available to like and willing to do stuff for other people. And I'm kind of just putting this out there here, and they might listen to this or watch this, or but it's that style of thing where it's like if you could get a couple of talented filmmakers and editors, and obviously they wouldn't do it for free, like I'm going to go on to funding this thing in a minute, but if you could get that, they're the type of people I could quite happily say, like, it's in your hands, and I feel very comfortable with that. Like, here's my vision, let's chat, let's work things out. Like, I want sort of, you know, creative input, but it's that balance. I mean, I love, one of my favorite videos Toby's ever edited is the Star of Thamesmead one. And like, you imagine a video like that, but more like progressive, crazy parkour. I've just realized I'm wobbling the camera with my elbow. Like crazy, like, that doesn't have to be crazy parkour, but you know what I mean. Like, we're talking very progressive stuff, but that style of like the occasional throwback archive thing or something, and like, I just loved the edit of that video. But about London as a whole would be insane. Plus, obviously, you'd have people on BTS, so you'd end up with like a BTS behind the scenes documentary or whatever. But so the big thing, the place my head has been going in two different directions is, in one world it'd be amazing to film this thing over the next year, and just be like, oh, people, you know, if you're in London, you get a cool clip, submit it, blah blah blah. But I think, as much as that's very, very inclusive and really kind of cool in a way, I think it's a lot harder to get a cohesive style out of a video. It's a lot harder to make sure it all gets done by a certain amount of time. There's a lot more variables that could go wrong, and you might end up suddenly like getting into summer next year and being like, shit, we don't have enough, like this thing's looking loose, and blah 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 blah. And I think unless you've got somebody basically project managing that all the fucking time, that would be really, really, really hard to do. The easier thing to do, the easier thing to like control, would effectively be you get a dream team of athletes. I mean, once again, to reference Capstone, it's kind of that vibe. You get a group of people and you say, cool, like, this is the creative direction, this is the vision. You get your filmmakers and you essentially set that team loose, whether or not you give them an open bracket of time and you just say, get this done in this time, or you say, you know, we're going to do this all in the next 2 weeks or something. I mean, we rented a house for Soul Destroyer for 10 days in London, and we filmed a huge amount of stuff in that 10 days, and we just went out every day on a mission. So there's options like that where you could really kind of cultivate and do that, and I think you would get a more reliable level of video if you did that. So it's tricky. It's tricky. The big thing is I don't like the idea of anyone doing anything for free. And this, I mean, I've shot myself in the foot in the past with this with Motus, because as much as we've never really sort of, you know, been in a position to pay people for things like crazy money or whatever, like, I really don't like asking for stuff and asking for help, I guess, even though I definitely should, and I've gotten better at it. But I would love to be in a position where I could be like, okay, we're going to get 10 athletes and 2 filmmakers and a behind the scenes guy, and like everyone's going to walk away with a little bit of something, or at least not lose money, because that's a horrible thing as well. Now, as obviously because of our current situation, like Motus is just not in a position to be like, oh yeah, we'll just put aside a chunk of money for that. Like, so then it's a big ask. It's like, well, how the fuck do we do this? Do we even have the right to try and do this? It's like, if we're not funding it. But then it's like, okay, well, there's options. Like, do we try and reach out to some big exterior sponsors? Like, there's huge skate and snowboard films and things that I watch that have, you know, far bigger brands who have essentially sponsored the film and made it possible. Because if we could secure a lump sum of money to basically make this thing happen, we could keep that to the side and then dip into it and fund this project. Or alternatively, and I hadn't really thought about this until Stora started crowdfunding for their big wall payout. I think they're putting money in themselves, but it's like, well, if Stora can sort of ask the community for money to do that. It's like, well, if we could essentially, it's basically like, you know, pre-ordering a film that ultimately would go on YouTube, but it's like a community crowdfunded thing. And it's like, if we could, you know, raise even $5,000 would be a significant amount of money to make something like that far more possible in that format of like a group and things than trying to get people to do it for free. Because some of these guys, it would be like, cool, we need you for a week or two. Like, that means you can't work. That means you can't take time off from things. And ultimately with athletes, there's always that risk of injury, etc. Especially when you're like, let's do some big stuff. So yeah, that's kind of currently where my thoughts are. And I'd obviously love to hear thoughts, whether it's in the comments or in the Discord. Like, the Discord's probably an easier place to keep track of things and building, so I encourage you all to join that. And yeah, the documentary photo book, which I'm kind of treating as two things in the same vein. They're definitely separate. Obviously there's many components that are completely separate, but they're gonna, for the most part, have a similar backbone of like history and narrative. Currently I've basically just been building out things that will definitely need to get done in Notion. I love Notion. If anyone doesn't know Notion, it's like a list. It's a task management. I don't know. You build lists, you can build out projects, and it's got so much potential. But yeah, I've been building out stuff like that, and I'm leaning to thinking that this is maybe the longer form paid thing. Like, it would obviously have to be really good to ensure that people want to put money behind it. But like, if anyone's seen Valley Uprising, which is an incredible, fucking outstanding documentary about Yosemite, I mean, that is a slightly longer timeline of history, and obviously we're talking about people climbing fucking mountains, and there's amazing use of like archive footage and archive photos and things. But that's like, you know, the pinnacle goal. If we could make something that was heading in that direction, that looks back at the last 20 years of parkour with a focus on London, but this is where you would have that capacity to branch out a little bit, because there's almost two timelines to think about. There is the timeline of just straight up history, you know, in 2003 this happened, in 2004 this happened, but also there's like, oh well, this move was invented here, and then we saw it happen here, and then somebody leveled it up here, and then somebody took it back to IMAX and did it here. And it's like, there's the progression and timeline of movement as well, which is huge. Like, I mean, if anything, that's just as important and relative to this whole conversation as just like, oh, the progression of sort of parkour as a whole, like the culture and things. But I think what my first thought and step is, and I think this is something that I can actually start actioning on quite soon, is I basically need to sit down and just talk, less interview, more talk with many people, and probably record them all like on Zoom or whatever. And just really just like, you know, I was talking to Callum Powell very briefly. He basically said he'd love to get involved in any form he can, and like he's the type of guy I could sit down for a couple of hours and just be like, okay, well, you started in, I think, 2006. So it's like, well, what things from that point do you think are relevant? What things do you think are culturally impactful, etc.? And to do that with everyone and build out where we think these sort of important things to talk about are. And there'll be, you know, contrasting opinions on some things like that, but take that basis and then use that to build out a rough narrative of the wider picture, and also use that to build out like prompting interview points, so that then when it comes to, let's say, interviewing, you know, Callum Powell or Toby or some of the PK Gen guys or some of the fat guys or whatever, it's like you've got a backbone of story and narrative that you're trying to sort of dig into, and then you can curate those questions that you're going to ask those individual people to do that. And I think from that point you're then moving in the right direction, and then it's a case of just sourcing a lot of archive footage, sourcing a lot of photos, working with potentially animators, editors, or either there's all those sort of secondary things to think about that make up the bigger thing, but really it's the most important thing is creating a captivating story that looks back and then also points forward, because that's the other half of it, is we're looking at sort of where we've been, but also it's like, okay, where do we think things are going to go? What's on the horizon? And it'll probably all massively change. You know, it might be like fucking Icarus, where we actually find out that there's a doping scandal from Russia involved in parkour, and Nate Weston and Tim Champion are actually the same person, or some crazy shit like that. And then, you know, I might end up getting nominated for an Oscar, but we'll see. There's a few obviously like things there with regards to both the book and the documentary, in terms of like, if the documentary was to be paid for, and obviously the photo book would be a paid for thing, although from talks I've already had regarding that because it's going to be a chunky thing and kind of glossy and stuff, it's pretty much not really going to make any significant money. But it's a case of, you know, if you're taking a load of somebody's archive footage or somebody's videos or whatever, it's like, are we doing a revenue split there, or is it just like a for the greater good thing? And you do like releases and stuff like that, but that's all further down the timeline. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at the moment, is I've been building out lists of people to contact and formatting all this stuff in my head, chatting to people and trying to work things out. And then on the clothing front, not a crazy amount of progress, just talking and thoughts. We are literally tomorrow receiving samples. This is stuff that Bloggy's been working on for months, that's been away at a factory, being like, I mean, he makes that stuff to an amazing standard, then we take it to a factory and then they recreate it and kind of say, this is how we do it, etc. None of that stuff is made specifically for this collection, but it's more made that like this is going to be the backbone of our Motus product line for the future going forward. And given the timelines, I mean, we're already in September. It's like, given the timelines, some of this stuff will inevitably be involved in that collection. So we're really kind of anxious to see that, because it's been a while, and sample days are always just terrifying, because some things are just trash and some things are amazing, and yeah, it's always very, very stressful. And yeah, I think the biggest question I'm still trying to get my head around is like, and to be honest, I haven't had that much input yet, is from a print design, little finishes, etc., how we make a collection that feels quite all-encompassing for the last 20 years without making it too biased to stuff that I care about, or stuff that's too new, and also stuff that's too obvious. Like, we've done a London collection before, Storm has done one, other people have referenced London. It's like, you don't just want to like take a photo of IMAX and slap it on a shirt and be like, London collection. So yeah, one thing I really would like to do is to bring back the Icon hoodie, which is what we did for the Run London collection, which had the Elephant and Castle, Barbican, and the South Bank pillar, and so many people didn't get it because I should have been way more like obvious about what it was about. People were like, why have you got a fucking elephant on a jumper and shit like that? But I really liked that hoodie because it was like subtle references to parkour spots. But yeah, and then with regards to the pop-up, not really any massive progress. I've had a few conversations with people. Somebody I spoke to, I can't remember the name, was sort of saying that like there's always the option of looking into sort of non-profit places such as churches or village halls and saying like, well, we could do, you know, a donation or a revenue split on something. My camera's turned off. I'm turning it back on. I really need to work this whole thing out. The downside about that is, for me, the most important thing for a pop-up would be like that organic footfall from an audience outside of parkour. Like, it would obviously be really cool to set up somewhere and then get hundreds of parkour athletes to come and see it all and buy things. But really, it would be, what I want to do is almost do that, create that stir from our existing audience, but do it in an environment where other people, like, it's so obvious, like the basically it's a streetwear area. You want to position yourself in an area of like-minded people and bring your existing kind of audience, make a big fuss, and in turn generate more hype and exposure, and do it in a space. And if you're on similar streets to kind of other streetwear stores, that would make a lot of sense. But it's definitely the hardest thing to pull off, and probably most expensive, and also probably the biggest risk, because you just might not actually make any money back and things like that. There's other options, like you could do an installation in another store, i.e., I don't know, there's End and big shops like that have kind of pop-up installations from smaller brands and things, but there's always potential there. There's a lot of things that I have absolutely no experience in and I've never explored. So yeah, it's we'll see basically. But yeah, that's kind of all my notes. But honestly, thank you hugely for all the feedback, all the questions, all the support, everything. I really didn't expect to kind of get such a response. So I do like truly appreciate it, and I fucking enjoy it. Like, it's put my head in such a good place. So I'm gonna go and like count stock now and just be thinking about more stuff that I probably should have said here, but I'm gonna try and do these as and when I said. Like, currently this has obviously been a week, but we'll just see what happens with regards to timelines and things. And ideally I'll try and make them a bit more engaging as time goes on, and with, maybe I'll take the camera away from here and do some other bits, but this is super fucking convenient for now, so I'm gonna leave it like that. And yeah, if you, honestly, sharing this, subscribing, etc., and anything you can do to gain me more exposure with regards to these talks is obviously going to help the project as a whole. Yeah, nice. I think that's everything. So yeah, thank you for the support. New collection dropping tomorrow, 6 p.m. if you're watching this today or listening. And yeah, I really hope the audio hasn't been awful. And look at my sexy setup, and I got like a glowing light back there. Darwin stayed asleep the whole time because he's a fucking gangster. And yeah, love you lots. Bye.